Good morning, everybody. As you can see, I'm going from here to sell ice cream on the boardwalk afterwards. Wanted to get that out of the way. Dr. Fakolt, nice to see you. Listen, on a serious note and a sad, sad note, before I get to my remarks this morning in our program, which is really exciting, I want to announce that today I will sign an executive order lowering all state flags tomorrow, Tuesday, July 26th, in honor and memory of a really good guy and friend, Assemblyman Ron Dancer, who passed away on Saturday. For those who didn't have the pleasure, and I know Dan knew him well, and he will echo this with great experience with Ron. If you didn't have the pleasure of knowing Ron, he was a humble guy, a diligent public servant who forged friendships on both sides of the aisle as good as anybody. Bob, you knew him well, as anybody out there, and he was a prodigious legislator, During his nearly 20 years in the Assembly, he put his focus on growing and protecting our agricultural and tourist industries and doing right always by our military veterans. Ron was a veteran himself. He was also, not surprisingly given his family history, a staunch supporter of our state's equestrian traditions, having come, as I mentioned, from a storied harness racing family. Our thoughts and prayers remain with his wife of 54 years, Brenda, with whom I spoke. I had the honor of speaking on Saturday afternoon, and their children and grandchildren, his friends, and his former colleagues. Ron will be missed by so many. So keep him in your prayers and his family. So with that, again, good morning. It is always a pleasure to start any summer day along the Jersey Shore, especially in Asbury Park. But given the weather, it's a pleasure, in this case, to be inside. It's always a pleasure to be with the President of the Board of Public Utilities, Joe Fiordaliso. We are also joined by one of New Jersey's greatest champions in the halls of the United States Capitol, the chairman of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, my congressman, chairman and dear friend Frank Pallone. We also have Assembly Transportation and Independent Authorities Committee Chair Dan Benson. Dan, great to have you. New Jersey Director of the Regional Plan Association, Zoe Baldwin. We also have Bob Gordon, a commissioner of the BPU, other elected officials, union leaders, business leaders, and friends. Together, we are proud to announce our continued commitment to transitioning our economy away from fossil fuels by incenting residents to switch from cars powered by traditional internal combustion engines to zero-emission electric vehicles. Our Charge Up New Jersey program is now moving into its third year of putting more New Jersey drivers behind the wheel of an all-electric vehicle. And starting this year, we are unveiling a new affiliated incentive program to help homeowners defray the costs of installing a home-based EV charging system, among other exciting developments. These programs represent approximately $60 million from the Clean Energy Fund this year. So, first and foremost, we're offering up to $4,000 cash on the hood to get more New Jersey drivers into an all-electric vehicle. As the prices of EVs continue to fall more and more in line with gas-powered cars, especially in the all-important and growing mid-price category, we know this incentive can push more buyers to making the decision to go electric. In each of its first 2 years, this program was maxed out. It helped Joe, I believe, put more than 13,000, am I right, new EVs in garages and on our roads. We expect more of the same this year, and with a refocusing of this incentive for mid-price vehicles, specifically, we believe we can expand the appeal of an electric vehicle to more consumers. If the price point in the car is below $45,000, it's the maximum benefit, which is a deliberate incentive and skewing of that incentive. And on top of that, we're ready to give residents who buy an electric vehicle an additional $250 to put toward installing a home charging station. But we know that not every driver interested in an electric vehicle lives in a single-family home. So we're also putting $4 million forward for condominium and apartment developments and mixed-use developments to install charging stations in their off-street parking areas. And for our historically overburdened urban communities, such as Asbury Park, we are offering extra funding to get more charging stations installed and operating. This parallels, by the way, other efforts in these communities. Through the Economic Development Authority's recent expansion of the so-called NJ-ZIP program, we are aiming to get more medium-duty vehicles in service in our urban areas. The trucks whose traditional tailpipe emissions are a significantly greater pollution burden on neighborhoods whose air is already considerably dirtier. And in Camden specifically, there will soon be electric buses taking to the streets to get commuters and residents where they need to go, replacing the standard buses belching diesel fumes. But there's still more. I feel like I'm in a Ginsu knife commercial here. But wait, it's not just residents or businesses we want to see go electric. We know that a lot of the fossil fuel emissions come from cars and trucks who bear government agency license plates. So we're also putting $4 million for local governments to purchase new EVs at the state contracting price. And at the state level, our new budget is putting nearly, Dan, thank you for your leadership on this, nearly $30 million for both state fleet EVs and charging infrastructure. And finally, we want to make sure that even tourists can drive their electric vehicles to enjoy their New Jersey vacations. For this, we have put another $6 million forward for tourist destinations across our state to install EV charging stations, and that would include right here in Asbury Park and in Monmouth County. There is no doubt that the tide has turned and electric vehicles are now a legitimate alternative, equal to their internal combustion competitors in price, if not superior, and in performance. Just turn on the television, you're no doubt going to see an advertisement from one car company or another touting their new all-electric options, not alongside anymore their gas-powered offerings, but on their own. And it's not just on television. We see the growth in EVs for ourselves. Every day, nearly 65,000 New Jersey registered electric vehicles take to our streets and highways. And by the close of last year, roughly 5% of all new vehicle sales nationwide were EVs. We want to help grow that share by getting more New Jerseyans into their first electric vehicles. And when they do, they will be following in some only in New Jersey history. After all, Thomas Edison spent 10 years at Menlo Park working to perfect a battery capable of powering an automobile, and he even built his own electric car. It just so happened that one of the young engineers at Menlo Park had a different idea. His name was Joe Fiordaliso. No, that's not right, sorry. I think that's a typo. That's not right. His name was Henry Ford. Ford's internal combustion engine has had a good run over the past century, but Edison's ideas are now eclipsing it. These state incentives, and it must be noted, and the federal incentives that Frank Pallone, in particular, and his colleagues have pounded away on in Washington, you combine the state and federal incentives, we will keep this progress moving. And together, we're going to keep giving New Jersey drivers a cleaner, all-electric way to move as well. With that, I mentioned him already. It is my great honor to introduce my congressman, the chairman, the one and only, a leader in this area and in so many others, Frank Pallone.
I don't know. I always love to be with the governor because he is always out front on everything, and I really appreciate it. What I'm going to start out by saying is that regardless of what the federal government does on clean energy, and what does it say here, 100% clean New Jersey, the state of opportunity, how true that is with Governor Murphy. So regardless of what we do on the federal level, it's always the case that New Jersey is way ahead of the federal government, right? Particularly on environment and energy issues. I mean, I don't just have to mention what he's doing today, but also things like offshore windmills and so many other things. But then I also have to say that Asbury Park is even ahead of us all, right? Because one of the reasons I'm sure you came today, and I was here a few months ago, I see Joe Grillo here, and the mayor wasn't able to come, but he wanted me. He's on the Board of Ed, amongst other things. You know who he is. But is that one of the reasons I'm sure you were going to come is because on 7th Avenue, where we were originally going to go, other than the heat, is where Asbury Park has the charging stations, which were there, as far as I know, before any other town in my district. Those green and white things, which I love to see. So this is it. Asbury is always out front as a town. My state is always out front in terms of the nation on these issues. But then you even went beyond and you started talking about batteries, which I think I mentioned to you that this afternoon I'm going to Edison, named after Thomas Edison, we're very proud of. The first really, or one of the first, go back to the 19th century innovators from New Jersey. But we're going to be talking about batteries because EOS, which is a battery company, is creating these innovative batteries. And we had the Secretary of Commerce here a couple months ago at EOS talking about trying to get incentives and creating jobs. They're going to have a lot more jobs now at that location because of the batteries. So I don't even know. I don't even have to say anything. You've already said everything. But I just want to say that as far as the federal role is concerned, it clearly complements what the governor's talking about, right? So he's talking about what we call the Charge Up and the residential charger program, which is basically helping individuals buy electric vehicles, install charging in apartments and multi-family dwellings or apartment dwellings, and also giving money to the towns. And the state program that I announced here, I don't know, it was a couple of months ago, I think you were there that day, Joe, was basically trying to set up, or the federal program, which was under the bipartisan infrastructure bill that, we keep talking about the billions of dollars that we got, the president signed last November. Basically it has, I think, $7.5 billion over 5 years to build out a national EV charging network. And New Jersey got the first round, which is why we were there that day, on 7th Avenue, $15.4 million for New Jersey. And there's going to be more. That's just the first stage. And the idea is to, have a nationwide program and give money to the states. And we're hoping that Asbury, in particular, but other towns in the state, obviously, also will be able to get that money. So, I don't know what to say. This is like the perfect thing, right? You got Asbury involved. You got the governor and the state doing all these things, and then the federal government complements that as well. But I will say, and that's how I'm going to end, that we're not first at the federal level. Asbury's first, and then the state, and then us, we're trying to bring in the rear and trying to do a few more things that we can nationally. So thanks again, Governor. Thanks.
Indeed, Frank and I spoke at the end of last week. This battery event in Edison is a big deal, and EOS is a big badge of honor in New Jersey. Secondly, you're absolutely right. We were going to have this event at 7th Avenue, and I think the collective decision was made that would all melt. Thirdly, we're not in Asbury Park by coincidence, and John Moore, the mayor, wanted to be here. I thank him and the council for being great leaders on this and so many other arenas. And last but not least, we couldn't have a better voice pounding away on New Jersey's behalf, Americans' behalf, than Frank Pallone. So Frank, thank you for everything. I kid him, but he's been around, he's seen it all, and he's a great leader. Please help me welcome the president of the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities, the one and only Joe Fiordaliso.
Aren't we fortunate to live in a state like New Jersey? The innovation that have created under the governor's leadership outpaces any other state in the union. We've learned from the mistakes of other states like California, and we are moving forward at a rapid pace. Electric vehicles is only one of the cornerstones of the governor's initiatives. And to have Congressman Pallone in Congress fighting for clean energy, and to have an assemblyman like Assemblyman Benson fighting for clean energy in the legislature. We are fortunate to live in this state. Now, why are electric vehicles so important? Because 40% of our carbon emissions comes from transportation. So that has to be one of the focal points. And you know, when the BPU was started back in 1911, then Governor Woodrow Wilson and I never envisioned that we'd be talking about electric vehicles. But here we are. Not only electric vehicles, offshore wind, solar, over 157,000 solar installations in the state. More solar installations than per square mile than any state in the union. Hydrogen. We are moving forward. Now, why is the part of charging stations so important? We don't want anyone to have range anxiety. I don't know about you, but I get nervous if it shows a quarter of a tank of gas. We don't want anybody to say, I'm not buying an electric vehicle because there's not enough charging stations. We're going to have plenty of charging stations. And I'm proud, Governor, to have some of my staff here. Kathleen Lewis, who is spearheading our electric vehicle program. Kathleen, you're doing a great job. Our Chief of Staff, Sharon Boland, is here. And, of course, you introduced Commissioner Gordon. We are moving. We have put New Jersey on the map. And we will continue to move forward with the assistance of our utilities, who are doing a phenomenal job in transitioning to a more eco-friendly generation platform. And we have Jim Fakel, the president of Jersey Central Power and Light, with us today. And they are doing a phenomenal job. We have a team that works constantly. We're the smallest department in the state of New Jersey, but we're the most powerful department in the state of New Jersey. And we have the best staff in the state of New Jersey. And during the pandemic is when they came up with this Charge Up New Jersey program. We didn't stop because there was a pandemic, because the job we're doing is too important. As many of you know, I have 6 grandchildren. And it's not for me that I'm doing this, because I certainly won't be around to see the traumatic effects of climate change. But those little guys will, and their children will. So what we're doing here today, we will be judged on tomorrow. So, Governor, I want to thank you for your vision, and it's an honor to be a part of an administration that continues to lead the way in the United States. And Congressman, you know we're always behind you, because you're doing yeoman's job down there in light of many challenges, might I say. So it's wonderful to be here. The BPU is working hard and will continue to work hard to bring to fruition your vision. Thank you.
Really well done, Joe. I'd love to underscore something that both of you gentlemen alluded to. While we're here for electric vehicles today, this is an and-all effort. It's not just one, there's not one magic wand here that addresses the challenges that we face and the needs that we'll face in the future. Jim knows this, and he and I have spoken about. He and I normally speak when there's a storm about to hit, so I'm very happy to see you. Although there are storms this afternoon, I believe, right? So, fingers crossed. But think about internal combustion engine cars have a doubly problematic issue in terms of our environment. And that's why it's not just enough to get more electric vehicles on the road, which is a huge step in the right direction. But remember, when you put the plug in, something's powering that plug. And we got to make sure we're continuing to pursue, whether it's offshore wind, solar, hydrogen, other alternative energies, so that by the time we get to the middle of the century, it all comes together in the cleanest state in America. It takes a village, and I will say in this case, it takes great leadership from our legislature. And there's no better example of that than the chair of the Transportation Committee and a real leader on electric vehicles and so many other policy arenas. Please help me welcome Chairman Dan Benson.
First, I'm going to thank for moving this indoors. You may remember, I think it was about a year ago, we did the bill signing at Seagirt. Yeah. And I think the governor, while I was speaking, had to run off to put on an extra round of sunscreen. The pens were so hot at the signing that it was, we almost weren't able to sign the bill. And so on this hot day again, I can't think of a better place to be, though, because of local leadership and what we're doing at the state and federal levels. This is an all-of-government effort to do what we need to do, not only for those future generations, but for us now. We're feeling the impacts of climate change now. So we can't wait any longer. So if we're going to have a 100% clean energy future, we have to tackle transportation. And so as we were signing that bill, that kind of pushed the ball a little bit further on incentives, but also on requirements, so that the next parking deck, the next parking lot would have the charging stations and the conduits needed to have the power there for when they take these incentives available, so that we don't have to retrofit the next condo community or the next apartment building. So they'll be there. And I know, working with many of those in the business community, they asked, okay, you're going to make a mandate. Well, how are you going to pay for it? And I said, don't worry. We're working on the incentives, working with amazing leadership and partnership with the BPU and with our electric utilities. And so I just want to thank Chairman Fiordaliso for all that you do at the BPU and your staff. I know we have a great Mercer County, by the way, contingent here. I should just say, as a proud 14th District representative. But seriously, it's just, we are making so many strides here in New Jersey. Forget the West Coast. I just came from the West Coast, by the way. And as you said, we've learned from many of the early adopting mistakes that other states have made. And we have made incentives that are not only targeted, but have a great return. Setting where the MSRP is at, making sure that the target of the incentives go to making them affordable for the average family. We're getting there as the prices come down. And because most of the charging happens at home, we are making sure that the incentive at the state level, thanks to the leadership of our governor, is also happening in the home by having home charging. And I'd be remiss if, I've worked so closely with our congressmen on so many of these bills. We usually check in to say, okay, this is what we're thinking of doing. Senator Bob Smith, who's not here, who is really the godfather of so many of these programs, and Senator Bob Gordon before him as well, just working together. But we always call over to the congressman's office and say, okay, this is what we're thinking. I want to make sure this is dovetailing with where the federal government's going. And the money that's coming down, you were here for the press conference, but 5 years worth of this. This is not a drop in the bucket. This is a long-term commitment by the Biden administration and this Congress to make sure that we supercharge what we're doing in states like New Jersey, all across the country. We are leading the way, and Asbury truly is leading the way in New Jersey. We're going to get it done because we have the leadership here and the partnership and that all of government level. So I'm proud to be just one part of that here in the legislature, and there's more to come. Thank you so much.
Two things. Dan, you were absolutely right, man. We were together last summer, and we were in a parking lot, and it was probably 90 degrees, and I had to run to the truck and put sunscreen on. And I was signing the bill. The pens were too hot to pick up. It was a comedy of errors, but the substance was great, and we got that done. One point you alluded to that I want to underscore, when we got into office, so this is 4.5 years ago, this isn't exactly right, but it's approximately right. I think we have the 11th largest population of any American state. I think we were 9th on electric vehicles, which is, you always want to be punching above your weight. But I think we were literally 47th in charging infrastructure, or something like that, Joe, right? And so, I remember you and I were saying at the time, we have to shrink that gap, but it can't be that we go from 9 down to, we had to get the infrastructure up, and we're doing that, and we've made a lot of progress. With that, last but not least, but importantly, a very important and clarion voice in this entire sort of as we think about where the state is headed going forward as a broad and general matter, but also in transportation, and in this case in electric vehicles. Please help me welcome from New Jersey's Regional Plan Association, Zoe Baldwin. Zoe.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be sharing the dais with such an exciting group of people that are really helping New Jersey lead the country. And so Regional Plan Association is the nation's oldest urban planning and policy organization. We just turned 100 this year, and let me tell you that in that time, we've worked on and through the tri-state's greatest challenges, from the Great Depression to 9/11, right up to the current existential threat that we face in climate change. And as we celebrate our centennial, I've been reflecting on that history of planning and change and on the importance of community and individual empowerment to the ultimate success of bold statewide policy. Some problems feel so big and so bad, it can be hard to see how one person can possibly make a difference. But when it comes down to it, all big things are just clusters of individual actions. Change is often just an accumulation of more people empowered to make better choices more often. And right now, as we sit in these chambers on the cusp of hurricane season, avoiding a record-breaking heat wave, it is clear that one of the most powerful choices any of us can make is to reduce our carbon footprint. And that's exactly what Governor Murphy's programs are helping us do. With the renewal of Charge Up New Jersey, the latest residential EV charger incentive, along with the suite of programs available to municipalities and businesses through DEP and BPU, it's even easier for New Jersey residents to do their part in the fight against climate change. And the only way we can truly tackle this thing, right, is by making more sustainable choices more often. And that's why but for many, there are hurdles like upfront investment and range anxiety, and these can be prohibitive to advancing these plans. And that's why in 2017, RPA's 4th regional plan called for scaling up of incentives of electric vehicles and planning extensive, comprehensive charging networks. 5 years later, New Jersey is making great stride toward those goals thanks to this administration and this legislature and this Congress's absolute commitment to decarbonizing. The governor's EV incentives, coupled with the broader statewide charging infrastructure deployment plan and bolstered by federal support from dogged fighters like Congressman Pallone, provide each of us with the monetary help to get going and the robust charging network we need to keep going. Transportation, as Mr. Fiordaliso mentioned, is about 40% of our emissions. And that means every errand and each commute costs us a whole lot more than just a tank of gas. We need to do everything possible to reduce and one day eliminate greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector. And extending and expanding electric vehicle programs like these, funding NJ Transit and encouraging more bicycle and walking trips are the way we are going to get there. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be here today as our governor, legislature, Congress members, and state regulators move in lockstep and advance critical programs like these. So thank you so much, and I hope everyone takes advantage of this incredible program. I recently joined the ranks of EV owners, and I am very happy about it. Let me tell you, if you haven't driven one, they're very fun.
Ioniq 5 by Hyundai. Shameless commercial for Hyundai products up here. Thank you, Zoe. The Regional Plan Association is an invaluable organization and voice in this and so many other arenas. I will resist the cheap, easy joke to say that I'm glad the Regional Plan Association shares a birth year with Joe, but I won't go down that route. Listen, as they say in Hollywood, it's a wrap. So on behalf of Congressman Frank Pallone, President Joe Fiordaliso, Chairman Dan Benson, Zoe Baldwin, Bob Gordon, and the team at the BPU and the folks here in Asbury Park who have so graciously hosted us today. Big day for New Jersey. Stay safe this afternoon. Jim, I think it's going to be pretty nasty out there. And Joe, I know you're looking into this. So it's going to get this fever is going to break this afternoon. So everybody be safe. Take care, folks.